9:24 p.m. on a crowded CTA train in Chicago, beneath the cold fluorescent lights and the grinding sound of metal wheels on steel tracks. No one was screaming. No one was fighting. There was just a man quietly pulling out a plastic container. And seconds later, a woman burst into flames in front of dozens of passengers. The most terrifying thing wasn't the fire itself. It was that there was no reason. If you want to follow the latest developments in this case, the court proceedings, and understand how justice unfolds in cases that shake entire communities, subscribe to our channel and stay with us through this story. It was an ordinary Monday evening, November 17th, 2025. The CTA Blue Line train headed toward downtown Chicago, pulling into the Clark and Lake Station area. It was late rush hour, and the train was still crowded with people just trying to get home safely. The atmosphere was familiar routine. There were no signs of danger, no warnings of what was about to unfold. It was just another Monday night commute, where everyone assumed they would simply arrive home without incident. Bethany Magee, 26 years old, sat alone in the middle of the train car. She wasn't talking to anyone. There had been no argument, no confrontation, no heated exchange. She didn't know the man who sat near her. This wasn't a crime of passion or jealousy. There was no personal vendetta, no history between them. Bethany was simply a person who sat in the wrong seat, in the wrong car, on the wrong train, on the wrong night. Lawrence Reed, 50 years old, sat nearby. According to federal charges filed against him, he would soon be accused of violence and terrorism targeting public transportation infrastructure. But at that moment, to the other passengers, he was just another commuter on a Monday evening train. According to case records, the suspect allegedly obtained gasoline at a gas station approximately 20 minutes before the attack. Security cameras at the station captured mundane footage that would become chilling in retrospect. A man at a pump, a plastic container being filled. The date stamp reading November 17th, 2025. The time showing 9:04 p.m. In that moment, other customers were filling their own tanks, heading home from work, picking up snacks from the convenience store. No one noticed anything unusual. No one could have known that the container being filled would become a weapon 20 minutes later. It was just one quiet action in a city of millions making quiet actions every second. But it was enough to set a tragedy in motion. 20 minutes. That's all it took between a man filling a container at a pump and a woman's life being forever changed on a train car. The Blue Line train rumbled through the Chicago evening, its familiar rhythm unchanged. Inside car number 5141, according to court documents, approximately 30 to 40 passengers occupied the space. Some scrolled through their phones. Others stared blankly ahead, lost in the tired thoughts that come at the end of a Monday. A few read books or listened to music through earbuds. The train's interior was a typical scene of urban disconnection, strangers sharing space but existing in separate worlds. Bethany sat in a seat roughly midway through the car near one of the poles. Security footage would later show her checking her phone, adjusting her bag, looking up occasionally as passengers got on and off at each stop. She had no idea she was being watched. Behind her, several rows back, Lawrence Reed sat with a plastic container near his feet. For how long had he been watching her? Had he selected her specifically, or was she simply the nearest target when his alleged plan reached its moment of execution? These questions would haunt investigators, but the cameras couldn't capture intent, only action. At 9:23 p.m., the train was between stations, moving at full speed through the darkened tunnel. The overhead lights cast their harsh fluorescent glow on tired faces. Then at 9:24 p.m., and approximately 17 seconds, according to the precise timestamp on security footage, movement occurred at the back of the frame. The suspect allegedly rose from his seat container in hand. What happened next unfolded in seconds, though witnesses would later say it felt like both an eternity and an instant. According to the federal indictment and witness statements compiled by investigators, the suspect moved quickly down the aisle toward Bethany. She didn't see him coming. Why would she? This was a train car, not a battlefield. Her back was to him. She was scrolling through her phone. Then, according to charges, he allegedly doused her with the liquid. The sharp, unmistakable smell of gasoline suddenly filled the enclosed space. Bethany's reaction was immediate and instinctive. She jumped up, gasoline soaking through her clothes, her hair dripping onto the floor. The other passengers began to notice. Heads turned. Someone shouted. But there was no time to process what was happening before the next horror began. According to the allegations detailed in court filings, the suspect allegedly produced an ignition source. Some witnesses later reported seeing a lighter. Others weren't sure what they saw, their minds unable to fully process the scene unfolding before them. Fire erupted, not slowly, not gradually, but in a sudden, terrible bloom of orange and yellow flame. Bethany was engulfed. Her screams, according to witness accounts, were the sound that would haunt everyone in that car for the rest of their lives. She ran. According to the indictment, she moved down the length of the train car flames, covering her body, leaving a trail of fire in her wake. The suspect allegedly pursued her. Why? To finish what he started, to ensure she couldn't escape. The charging documents don't speculate on motive, only document action. In those seconds, the psychological reality of what was happening hit the other passengers. This wasn't a movie. This wasn't a nightmare they would wake from. This was real fire, real screams, real human flesh burning, and they were trapped in a moving metal tube with it. Some passengers backed away, pressing themselves against the walls and windows. Others covered their mouths against the smoke and chemical smell. A few pulled out phones to call 911, their fingers shaking so badly they could barely dial. One witness would later tell investigators that the most terrifying part wasn't the fire itself, but the sound. The roar of flames, the sizzle of burning fabric, and worse, Bethany's screams turning to something more primal. And underneath it all, the continued mechanical sound of the train moving forward on its tracks, as if the universe itself was indifferent to the horror occurring inside this one car. According to the charges, the suspect allegedly picked up the burning container from where it had fallen or been dropped and wielded it like a weapon, using it to spread the fire further. Court documents describe passengers attempting to help Bethany, trying to beat out the flames with their jackets and bags. But the fire was too intense, too fast, fed by the gasoline that had soaked into every fiber. The train began to slow as it approached the Clark and Lake station. Through the windows, the platform lights became visible. The train operator, alerted by emergency calls from passengers, was bringing the train to an emergency stop. But inside car 5141 time had already split into two categories before and after. Everyone in that space was now living in the after, and they always would be. As the train lurched to a halt and the doors opened at 9:25 p.m., passengers poured out onto the platform in a chaotic evacuation. Some were crying, some were silent in shock. Some were covered in soot and smelled of smoke. And Bethany, according to first responder reports, collapsed on the platform, her body severely burned, going into shock from the trauma and pain. The suspect allegedly exited the train and left the scene on foot, disappearing into the station's corridors and stairways. For a brief moment, he was just another person in a crowded transit hub, anonymous in the chaos. But the cameras had captured everything. The digital eyes that watched Chicago's transit system never blinked, never looked away. Chicago Fire Department paramedics arrived within minutes. They found Bethany conscious, but in critical condition, with severe burns covering a significant portion of her body. The percentage and degree of burns were documented in medical reports that would become part of the evidence file. She was rushed to a nearby hospital with a specialized burn unit. The platform where she had collapsed was marked with char marks and the lingering smell of gasoline and burnt material. The train car itself became a crime scene. Investigators would spend hours documenting every detail, photographing burn patterns on the floor and seats, collecting samples of residual flammable liquid, marking the path Bethany had taken as she tried to escape. The metal poles showed heat damage. The floor had scorch marks that traced her desperate run down the length of the car. It was a map of terror drawn in ash and char. The investigation moved swiftly. Law enforcement collected physical evidence from the scene, including the container a lighter and traces of flammable liquid. They extracted video footage from multiple cameras throughout the train system. The digital breadcrumbs told a story that was as clear as it was horrifying. Investigators traced the suspect's movements in the 20 minutes leading up to the attack. Gas station surveillance footage allegedly showed the suspect preparing gasoline before heading to the train station. Every step, every movement, every decision was now being reconstructed by detectives working around the clock. On November 18, 2025, one day after the attack, Lawrence Reed was arrested. Investigators noted that he had apparent burn injuries on his hands, injuries consistent with handling fire. The evidence was mounting. The timeline was solid. The case was coming together with the kind of clarity that investigators both need and dread, because it confirms the worst details of what happened. Federal prosecutors brought charges against Reed under federal statutes related to violence and terrorism targeting public transportation systems. The Department of Justice announced that the charges could carry a sentence of up to life in prison. This wasn't being treated as a simple assault or even attempted murder. The federal government was making a statement by invoking terrorism statutes. When a seemingly random attack on an individual is classified as terrorism, what message are authorities sending? According to Reuters and other news sources, the suspect is currently in federal custody and is undergoing psychiatric evaluation. The legal proceedings are ongoing and no final verdict has been reached. The case remains in the judicial process, with pretrial motions and hearings scheduled in federal court. The aftermath of this attack has sent shockwaves far beyond one train car. In the days and weeks following November 17th, federal authorities issued warnings to the Chicago Transit Authority. They indicated that federal funding could be affected if the CTA didn't enhance safety measures. The agency was required to submit specific plans and concrete steps to address security vulnerabilities. The incident has sparked a broader debate about safety on public transportation. The monitoring and management of repeat offenders, coordination between police departments and transit authorities, and mental health support systems. How do we prevent random acts of violence in public spaces? How do we balance privacy concerns with the need for surveillance and security? How do we identify and help individuals who may pose a danger before they act? These questions don't have easy answers, but Chicago's commuters are demanding that someone find them. For Bethany Meji, the road ahead is long and painful. Her physical recovery from severe burn injuries will take months, if not years. The psychological trauma may never fully heal. For her family, the question that haunts them is the same one that haunts every passenger who was on that train. Why Bethany? Why that night? Why at all? This case reminds us of the fragility of safety in public spaces. A subway ride, a bus trip, a commute home should never be this dangerous. But until every person can travel without fear, until our systems prioritize human safety over bureaucratic convenience, stories like Bethany's will continue to happen. Justice isn't only about punishment, it's about making systems safer so tragedies don't repeat. It's about learning from horror and building better protections. It's about ensuring that the next person who boards a train in Chicago can do so with confidence that someone is watching out for them. If you want me to update you on the latest court filings and trial proceedings, subscribe to our channel. And comment below. What do you think the CTA needs to change immediately? How can we make public transportation safer for everyone? Your voice matters in this conversation, and together we can push for the changes that will save lives. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they must turn toward a future where no one burns on a Monday night train.